You say it without meaning to. A phrase slips from your mouth like breath, like habit, and suddenly, you've revealed everything you've ever been told to hide. I'm so stupid. I don't know why I always do this. It's probably my fault. You say these things like punctuation, not because you believe them, but because once upon a time you had to. Not to be right, but to survive. You echo things you never chose to believe, inherited words, second-hand truths, beliefs whispered into you before you could speak for yourself, like seeds planted in silence, by voices that claimed to love you, by systems that needed you obedient, by people too broken to notice what they were shaping. And now, here you are, grown, capable, articulate, and still repeating spells you don't remember learning. You call yourself lazy. You call yourself broken. You say I'm not enough as casually as you say good morning. And you don't even flinch, because those words feel like home, even if they've always hurt, even if they never belonged to you. That's the wound of language. We confuse familiarity with truth. We assume the voice in our head is ours, when half the time it belongs to someone else. It sounds like insight, but it's inheritance. A parent's criticism dressed up as self-awareness. A teacher's ridicule, now your own inner narrator. A culture's obsession with achievement, now your shame for needing rest. These words didn't come from you. They were given, slipped into your psyche when you were too young to protest. They clung to you like dust, silent, invisible, constant, until you began to mistake them for your voice. You didn't ask for these phrases. You didn't agree to them. You never signed a contract. And yet, they became law. You say, I always ruin things, but that's not you speaking. That's the sound of someone else's disappointment echoing in your ribcage. You say, I'm fine, I'm used to it, but that's not resilience. That's resignation masquerading as strength. This is the trick, the illusion, the haunting. You think you're thinking, but you're remembering what it felt like to be overlooked, to be scolded for feeling, to be rewarded for shrinking, to be loved only when convenient. And somewhere in that memory, a sentence took root. A sentence that never belonged to you, but grew anyway. I'm too much. I'm not enough. I'll never be like them. You say it now with conviction. But that voice was trained, and the tragedy is, you believed it. Not because it was true, but because no one ever taught you to doubt it. The way you speak has roots deeper than reason, deeper than intellect, deeper than language itself. And if you listen carefully, not just to what you say, but to where it comes from, you'll hear it. Someone else's voice inside your own. A shadow lingering behind every syllable. A ghost writing your dialogue from behind the curtain. And it begs a quiet, terrifying question. If your words were given to you, then who are you without them? Who are you when you stop performing your wound? When you stop narrating your fear? When you stop translating yourself through someone else's disappointment? You won't find the answer quickly, because it doesn't live in language. It lives in the silence beneath it. And that is where we begin. There was a girl I knew who could never take a compliment. Not because she was shy, not because she lacked self-worth, but because long before she knew how to love herself, she learned that admiration was dangerous. That praise wasn't praise, it was a transaction, an invisible contract that always ended in loss. She had learned in subtle glances and broken promises that beauty was never given freely. It was rented, owned by others, returned when convenient. So when someone said, "You look beautiful today," she didn't feel seen. She felt exposed. She didn't hear kindness. She heard risk. She heard the approach of something she didn't trust. A compliment, for her, was the beginning of a test. What do you want from me? What do I owe for this? And somewhere deep inside, buried beneath years of silence and self-doubt, a voice she didn't recognize whispered, "Don't believe them. Don't fall for it. Don't you dare hope again." She'd smile politely, say thank you, because she was trained to be gracious. But her eyes would drift, her mind would run, and the war would begin, reviewing every perceived flaw, counting calories from yesterday, scanning the mirror like a crime scene. Not because she believed she was ugly, but because the word beautiful had always belonged to someone else. To the girl who never had to try. To the one who got picked first, whose life seemed effortless, whose body obeyed, whose sadness was forgiven because it was framed well. To the woman in the magazines. To the mother who looked radiant and disappointed at the same time. To the characters on screen who were worthy of rescue, but never of resting. And somewhere in that tangle of memory and meaning, the word beautiful became not a compliment, but a threat. This is what language does to us. It doesn't just describe the world, it shapes our place in it. We speak in borrowed words, inherited metaphors, hand-me-down beliefs that we mistake for truth. We say, "I'm just not lovable," but what we mean is, "No one loved me without conditions." We say, "I'm not talented," but what we mean is, "No one ever made room for what I could have been." We say, "I'm fine," but what we mean is, "I've learned how to suffer quietly." And it's not weakness, it's not drama, it's not a cry for attention. It's the inheritance of unexamined language, the kind that lives in the basement of the soul, the kind passed down like heirlooms, sharpened in silence, polished by repetition, until they become indistinguishable from our personality. Marcus Aurelius once warned, "Be careful not to be Caesarified," not to become so absorbed in roles, in armor, in external power that you forget your original self. But he might as well have said, "Be careful not to be languagified," because most of us don't lose ourselves in power. We lose ourselves in the grammar of survival, in the syntax of shame, in the idioms of insecurity, in the punctuation of pain so normalized we stop hearing it. Every sentence we repeat without question becomes a brick in the walls we live inside. A script we perform so well, we forget it was ever written for us. So when you say, "I've always been like this," pause, not to answer, but to ask, who told you that? And why did you believe them? Because every phrase you've normalized, every belief you've buried in daily speech isn't just a thought, it's a scar. And scars don't speak in language, they speak in silence. Until you learn how to listen. And in that listening, you begin to unwrite the life you never meant to live. Jung spoke of archetypes, ancient blueprints embedded in the psyche, etched into the architecture of our inner world. The mother, the shadow, the trickster, the wise old man. He named them not to label us, but to reveal what we unconsciously become when we forget to look inward. But there's one archetype he rarely named. The one who doesn't wear a mask or wield a sword. The one who doesn't haunt your dreams, but your speech. The verbal slave. The one who does not speak, but is spoken through. The one who wakes up every morning and opens his mouth like a ritual, not to express himself, but to maintain the illusion that he has something to say. He thinks he's expressing himself. He believes he's sharing his opinion, his truth, his unique angle, but he is only echoing, mouthing scripts that were handed to him before he knew how to ask, "Is this mine?" He's the one who uses cliches like they're commandments. Boys will be boys, as if masculinity is a curse that excuses cruelty. Money doesn't grow on trees, as if abundance is shameful and gratitude requires deprivation. I'll never be enough, as if worth is a competition and love a trophy. He doesn't mean harm. He doesn't even know he's speaking chains. But every time he opens his mouth, he tightens the noose. Because we don't just live in language, we live under it. We don't realize it, but we live in a spellbook. Every word, a sigil. Every sentence, a spell. Every belief, a contract we never remember signing. And we cast those spells over ourselves daily, dutifully, in the mirror, in conversation, in the silence of our mind. We whisper them to our children. We hurl them at strangers. We chant them online like hymns of fear. Not because they are true, but because they are familiar. That's the real poison. Not the lie itself, but how normal it feels to repeat it. You think you're making a decision when you say, "I'll never trust again." But maybe that sentence was planted in you the night your father walked out and never returned, and your mother cried at the kitchen sink but never told you why. Maybe when you whispered, "I don't need anyone," you were 7. And that wasn't strength, that was survival. Maybe when you said, "I'm strong," what you meant was, "No one checked on me, and I had to learn not to need it." Maybe strong woman wasn't empowerment. Maybe it was a smile you weren't allowed to drop, a body you weren't allowed to rest, a heart that wasn't allowed to ache. So now, softness feels dangerous. Affection feels like manipulation. And the silence you keep isn't peace, it's armor. Language became your shield, and it calcified into identity. The verbal slave doesn't look like a prisoner. He laughs at his own trauma, as if making it funny makes it harmless. She preaches resilience with a cracked voice, but stutters when asked, "When was the last time you rested?" They speak as if they've healed, but never stop talking, because silence would force a reckoning. To stop speaking is to face the question, who am I when I'm not performing my pain? And most people aren't ready for that. So they speak louder, faster, with certainty that sounds like clarity, but is only fear wearing a microphone. You are not your thoughts, but you are responsible for the voice they use. And if your voice is full of borrowed language, defensive phrases, inherited mantras, and ancestral shame, then it's not your voice. It's a museum. It's a reenactment. It's a ritual of repetition meant to keep you small. You are not here to recite. You are here to reclaim. Because until you stop reciting the past, you will never know what you truly believe. Only what you've been taught to fear.